the conditions precedent number 24 and 31, which I'm going to read to you as we go into the conversation, require that PDS should furnish it to ECG an initial payment security in the form of either a demand guarantee or a letter of credit issued by a qualified bank against power purchases and lease payments. Now, according to findings by FTI, which is a consulting company from the United States, for MEDA, in fact, they were contracted by the Millennium Development Authority, due to difficulties with raising a bank guarantee and in the absence of tariffs set in accordance with the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, rate setting guidelines, Ghana approved PDS's request submitted and demand guarantees issued by an insurance company. And now we know, obviously, as always been the case, is done well. Among other things, the report by FTI Consulting as submitted to MEDA contained conclusions. And I'll just read a few of the conclusions as I introduce my guest. 1, the payment securities that were presented by CalBank and PDS to MEDA on February 27, 2019, which were subsequently accepted by the Ministry of Finance and ECG, are compliant with the recommendations contained in the URDG. And talk about essentially the URDG is the Uniform Rules for Demand Guarantees 758. 2, we have not seen any documents that would suggest that as of March 1, 2019, PDS, CalBank, Danwell, and or personnel from MEDA should have questioned the validity of the payment securities. We further note that officials from AI Court confirmed to KNL that the stamp applied on the acknowledgement and agreement page of the payment securities is that of AI and Court. As a matter of fact, this particular reports that conclude that based on the review of all the documents, PDS, MEDA, and all other personnel of these two institutions did no wrong in this whole PDS scandal. Kojo Poku is a Nigerian expert. He joins me in studio together with Kwame Jantua as well, who is an energy expert. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Good morning to you.
How are you?
I could have been better if all of this, was unpacked to the understanding of my grandmother, who only cares about having her lights on and ECG being a strategic asset of this country in safe hands.
Yeah.
What do we make of this particular report?
Well, which of the reports? Because
let's start off with the MEDA report. Because
the FTI report. Okay. You see, most people are coming out to say that the FTI report contradicts the government report. It doesn't. If you look at, I've always said that if you ask the wrong question, you get the wrong answer. Mm-hmm. If you add the right answers, then you get the right answers. The scope of work, which is attached to the report, the consultants were asked their work that they were supposed to do. They were given a scope of work to undertake, and they went according to the scope of work given. So if you look at their report, they gave the report according to the scope of work. They were to interview various people, the various players, how this thing whole came about, how we ended at where we are. If you do not read the report in its entirety, you might make the wrong conclusion. One-liners are not good for a report. And yesterday, there was an attempt by the media or some people behind the scene to put this in the media and say that, look, PDS has been cleared. And some of us came up strongly and said, no, that's not true. Because the entire report brings more questions than answers.
True.
So if we look at the FTI report, what FTI seek to do was that, look, let's now do a forensic edit, chronicle the events. They spoke to the banks, how this whole thing started. They spoke to Downwell, they spoke to ECG, they spoke to even the CID, they spoke to MEDA, they spoke to PDS. So this report, really, if somebody reads part of it, is not doing justice. But it goes to show us how this thing started and how it came about. But let's not waste time and let's delve into this thing. The basis of this guarantee, as you rightfully said in the introduction, in the lease agreement and the bulk purchase agreement, there are two agreements. PDS is supposed to put a lease payment guarantee for $100 million every quarter and $250 million for bulk purchase guarantee, which is $250 million every quarter. Both put together is $350 million every quarter. In the agreement that was signed, in section 5.11 of the agreement, the 5.11 tells you clearly what the payment security is supposed to be. What it says is that, look, every month there is a certain payment that PDS is to make to ECG for the lease of the concession that they've been given. Then at the end of every month, power that has been given to PDS to distribute, they should give a guarantee for that power that's been given to them. If at the end of the month, PDS is not able to pay ECG, who are the landlords, they are not able to pay them the lease 10 days after the end of the month, the structure of the guarantee, which was put in place in the spirit of the agreement, was to say that 10 days after the end of the month, if PDS has not paid any of the two monies to ECG, ECG just goes to a bank account which all authority has been given in either the LC or the bank guarantee to just go and collect the money due them. After they have collected the money due them, 14 days after that, PDS is to replenish that account, okay, so that their guarantee is put back in place. That is the fundamental operation of 511. That is the payment security. Now, in the Annex 2, and in the Schedule 2, Annex 10 of the agreement, of the same agreement, it gives you a format of the wording that the both letter of credit or payment guarantee is supposed to be in. It is such that a bank issues it. Whenever ECG needs to go and collect this money, they don't need to go to PDS. They go straight to the bank and make that withdrawal. Now, we've been told that there were problems with any bank issuing those guarantees to PDS. But let me tell Ghanaians, there are two fundamental reasons why. It is not because the tariffs methodology and those things were not in place. It's not true. Look, if we are
that's what the FTI report actually indicated.
That's why
actually pointed fingers at PDS.
That's why I'm explaining. If you want us to increase tariffs to the level where you can do easy recoverables, then we would have left the concession with ECG. Because the biggest problem ECG had ever complained for was not lack of manpower, lack of realistic tariffs. They've always said that they are not allowed to charge realistic tariffs. And government have said that, look, because of your old machinery, you are not able to reduce your losses from the 21% it is to acceptable levels of 8%. If we bring a company who is bringing enough money, if the company is bringing 500 million to invest in your machinery, he can reduce that losses from 21% to 8% so that you get more money. So we don't need to burden Ghanaians with more tariffs. So that issue, because look, the tariffs PDS is asking for, TPLC can never. Me and you will be overburdened. So let's not.
Do you have an idea of the tariff that PDS
Well, let me give you an example. In the tariff that we are paying now, the lease payment, which is $100 million a quarter, PLC only factors in $56 million a quarter. So there is a differential of $46 million that is not factored into the agreement, into the PLC calculation. So if you want PLC to now factor in the full $100 million a quarter, which is $400 million a year, Ghanaians will be overburdened. So it wasn't a straitjacket problem. And you guess what? During the conferences and the bidding process, PDS and its Miracle concession was aware of these things. Be it that they were given assurances that it will be reviewed or not reviewed, they were aware that there were challenges. So let's not sidetrack. Let's go forward. So now, when the issue came up that they are not able to raise the money, the reason that nobody would give PDS the money or the guarantee is in twofold. One, the shareholders of PDS does not have any balance sheet. They don't have any balance sheet. If you go to get a guarantee from a bank, you need to present, you as a company, you need to present your balance sheet. And then the bank will do a due diligence on the shareholders of PDS. Then if the shareholding of PDS, their balance sheet is healthy, the bank can now give you the guarantee based on the shareholders' balance sheet. In default of the shareholders not having a balance sheet, then the due diligence is done on the asset you are going to acquire, their balance sheet. So this is purely the due diligence being done on the balance sheet of ECG. So everybody looking at ECG will tell you ECG is not profitable. We know that.
True.
But the issue is that we needed a competent company who has money to come in and turn ECG around.
Which PDS shareholders did not have.
They don't have the financial balance sheet to be able to do this transaction. They have not been able. Look, they brought 2 letters in the bidding process. 2 letters they brought, one from Standard Bank of South Africa and one from AFDB Bank. AFDB Bank and those letters are conditional. After they've been given a concession and Standard Bank and AFDB Bank came and looked at the transaction, they said, look, based on the situation on the ground, we cannot support you. Because the due diligence, again, as I'm explaining, the due diligence is heavy on the balance sheet of ECG. Okay? So then going forward from that, you realize that the government agreed that, okay, fine, no problem. If you cannot get a bank to issue you the guarantee, use an insurance company. And that we've seen in the report, that the president, the vice president, the chief of staff, everybody sat and agreed. But there's a thought that IFC advised them to do that. IFC did not advise them to do it. In fact, if you look at this report, IFC was skeptical. IFC said that, look, we are not confident that the insurance companies have analyzed PDS credit and understand the risks they are assuming. A demand guarantee from an unrated insurer introduces additional complexity, resulting in significant effort on due diligence and structuring. So IFC cautioned them. But they went ahead to now do the insurance. Because further, IFC now said that if the wording is agreed on and is right and achieves what 511 wants to do, then yes, they can go ahead.
But you see, Mr. Jato, let me come to you, because the part of the said government report, which is yet to be made official, but was leaked sometime last week, said PDS failed to provide demand guarantees for such an agreement, and that enough financial guarantees for this deal was not also present, which Kojo has made the point. So really, in the end, these 2 reports are out. The one who is watching us is asking, and so what? What do we do with this particular deal?
Alfred, good morning to the viewers. Good morning to
Thank you.
Kojo and yourself. I believe that at the point when PDS approached MIDA and said to MIDA, we are having challenges acquiring a first-class bank. So let's move and let's see whether we can use an insurance company. That was the point where everything should have stopped. That was the point where MIDA, the government, should have said, this particular company does not have the clout to pursue. Now, COSECA said something about this initially. The collusion of stakeholders of the ECG
concession.
Yes, concession. They analyzed all the companies that had put their name forward to bid for this.
That had Dr. Steve Mantiao and the others.
Steve Mantiao, myself, Kojo, Richard Nyama, Kofi Bentil. You know, we actually, and COSECA had started working on this thing far back, especially when the unions were having challenges with government on the 20% local content, where we went to the president and said it needs to be increased, and it was increased to 51. So COSECA was a stakeholder in terms of making sure that the right things are done. Now, the moment PDS came and said we can't do it, it should have stopped. Government should have gone back to MCC and said to MCC, unfortunately, the company who have won this bid do not have the financial capacity to go ahead with it. So, let's renegotiate this MCC 500 million. The challenge we had at the time was that government was eager to access the 500 million because the due date for the expiration of that 500 million was very close.
As a result of this court action.
Court and the delays. And all, exactly. Was very close. So we threw caution to the wind and looked more at the 500 million than looking at the company that had put its name forward to run this thing. Because when you look at the reports and the terms of reference given to the team that went to Qatar, if you permit me, please, I'll read. It says, and this is from the leaked report, it says, terms of reference. The following are the terms of reference for the delegation. 1. Ascertain whether Al-Qut authorized the issuance of the guarantees on behalf of PDS and in favor of Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG. 2. Ascertain whether Al-Qut issued the type of guarantee PDS presented to the government of Ghana. 3. Establish whether Al-Qut ever issued any form of guarantee to ECG, and if so, on whose authority this was done. And then 5. Establish whether Al-Qut had a guarantee in place for ECG on March 1st, 2019. This was the terms of reference for the team. Now, let me tell you Al-Qut's answer. Key points made by Al-Qut. Al-Qut ascertained, and I'm reading from the report, that the first time the matter of the purported issuance of demand guarantees as security for the LAA and the BSA came to its attention was when the company received the first letter from the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, dated 28th February. That was the first time Al-Qut heard. So, Danwell, Joe Australia, these were the two companies handling the insurance. We need to ask them.
Don't forget Cowbank.
And Cowbank, yes.
Cowbank,
Cowbank
are the prime lead insurance. Cowbank, let's not forget Cowbank.
Yes, Cowbank. They made us understand that they had acquired a reinsurance company, Al-Qut. Al-Qut is saying they knew nothing about it till they received the letter from ECG. This was a surprise to the company, as it had no record of such a transaction. No, are we going on break?
Yes, okay. But as a matter of fact, I need you to hold on to that, because that is indeed a very, very instructive, point that will complement all others that we've been talking about. And right after this break, stay with us. Lawyer Kwame Jantua would get into that aspect of the report. You're welcome back to Key Points here on TV3. We are live on 3FM 92.7 and on TV3 Ghana on Facebook. Lawyer Kwame Jantua is a private legal practitioner, also an energy expert. Joining me in studio, Kojo Poko as well, is an energy expert. We've been having a discussion on this. Before the break, Lawyer, you were talking about, in fact, you were going to give me the response of Al-Qut to the questions that are captured in the government leak report.
Yes.
What is it?
So I gave you the first half of it, where Al-Qut indicated that on the lease assignment agreement and the bulk supply agreement, this was the first time they were hearing about it when ECG contacted them. They further go on to say that this was a surprise to the company, as it had no record of such a transaction. No application for such a facility had been received by the company from any entity. Neither had there been a delivery of any document regarding the LAA or the PSA to Al-Qut. They thus set out to ascertain the facts surrounding the alleged insurance guarantees when they received this. Now, the one thing that seems to be different from the FTI and the government report in terms of the people they spoke to, FTI they spoke to, and they've outlined that in the FTI report. And I'll quote, it says, and this is key, these observations are based upon the information currently available to FTI. In this respect, it should be noted that as of the date of this final report, FTI has not been able to speak to Osman Hag Musa, Chief Officer of General Insurance, Al-Qut Insurance and Reinsurance Company, whose letter dated July 16, 2019, was a major factor in the commissioning of this investigation. So they didn't talk with this Musa guy. But when you come to the key points, it is the Musa guy, the Musa, that gentleman, who is reporting who set out the key points for Al Quds. And he further goes on to say,
sad.
He further goes on to say, Mr. Musa made inquiries of the officer of Al Quds whose signature appeared on the demand guarantees, Yahya Al-Nouri. Al-Nouri initially denied signing any guarantees and promised to resolve it with the broker Joe Australia. You can see the way things are meandering in. He goes on to say, when asked about a letter dated 13th March 2019, a purported reply to the ECG letter of 28th February, Al Quds ascertained that same was a fabrication and part of the fraud perpetrated by the proponents of the demand guarantee. Who are those proponents? It could be Calbank, could be Danwell, it could be PDS themselves.
No, Joe Australia.
Joe Australia.
Yes, Joe
is part of it. The alleged signatory, Mr. Musa, denied being the author of that letter. He claimed that this signature was not forged by Yahya Al-Nouri and that his signature is palpably different from what appears on that letter. And the good thing is that this is what the government team has ascertained from Al Quds. The one thing that I had expected the government team to also do was to go to Jordan and interview Joe Australia. Because in all these communications, Joe Australia seems silent.
He's a key. No, he's not. He's not. He's here. Joe Australia is captured heavily in the
FTI report, but not in the government report.
Wait. For me, the government report is key for me.
Well, that's fine, but you see, the government report is key for me.
Could you let me finish? The government report is key for me. The challenge we have now is that MCC and MIDA are sticking to their report. Government, I'm sure, they haven't said anything, but will stick to their report. The only thing running through the two reports is Al-Nouri. So, who do we, the public, believe?
Both. And
government?
Let me set it out.
FTI.
Let me set it out. It's both. Okay, both reports say the same thing. Let me set it out. Okay, look. Joe Australia is an insurance broker. Danwell partners Joe Australia. Danwell takes business, only insures 5% as per the NIC law locally, and takes the 95% out for reinsurance. They give it to Joe Australia, who is the broker. Joe Australia now plays that insurance with various reinsurance companies across the world. In this case, Joe Australia clearly states that Joe Australia is saying that Al Quds was not to reinsure the risk. He says that. Listen, let me read. He says that, look, Al Quds in FTI report, yes. Joe Australia noted that they broker various types of reinsurance coverage with Al Quds, including but not limited to those relating to trade risk and demand guarantee. Joe Australia, however, noted in past trade-related transactions were done on a full retro basis, meaning that Al Quds would take on the credit risk, but would effectively retrocede 100% of the risk for a 10% fronting fee. Process that would allow for the risk not to reflect in Al Quds' net account.
But that is not right.
Exactly. So that, you see, that is the fraud being perpetrated by Joe Australia, and he clearly states it. Yeah. He's not hiding it.
And that is
he even goes on to say that.
And that is why I say the government should have gone to Jordan to interview Joe Australia too.
Let me read again. Joe Australia noted that this was a premium to be paid to final bearers of the risk. In insurance, the only time an insurance is insured is when a premium is paid. So as far as what Al Quds is saying, they're 100% right. They have not been paid any premium, so they do not have any risk. They've not covered any risk. What the Yahya Al-Nouri did is that he works for Al Quds. He runs a gig with Joe Australia. So when Joe Australia needs a cover note, they go to Al-Nouri, who on the side collects that 10% and gives a cover note. But bear in mind, the bank, that's why the government is saying it's a fraud. It's a fraud because we all know that Danwell does not have the capacity to insure a 350 million guarantee. So Danwell is the prime insurer. But his cover, the person who is giving him the bone, the spine, is Alkut. But only Alkut's cover note. So the conspiracy was that. And let's not forget Cowbank. Cowbank played a very major role in all this. In the government report signed by the Interior Minister, it indicts Cowbank and Danwell and Deputy Attorney General. It indicts Cowbank for fraud. It indicts Danwell for fraud. So I'm expecting that Bank of Ghana will investigate Cowbank for fraud. NIC, National Insurance Commission, will investigate Danwell for fraud.
This is clearly captured in the
government report, where they have done other transactions with the same process, where Al Nuri gives, because from what the government report says that, quickly, when they went through the emails of Al Nuri after he's been suspended, they found out that it's something he's been doing. So they've done, even the terminal, the container terminal in Takrady, that's the same process they used. So whoever gave money to Cowbank to ensure that, based on the guarantee procured by Joe Australia, it is said in this report that it's a fraud.
This, you refer to this particular arrangement.
The arrangement is fraudulent. Okay, the arrangement for now. Everybody should ask themselves, why did Cowbank take $5.2 million just to be advisors? It's not right. You cannot be doing this if you don't know the motive behind it. So they and Danwell had a way of raising these fictitious guarantees from Alkut. Not Alkut as a company, but a principal of Alkut in the name of Yaya Anuri, who connives with Joe Australia to give. Because it's clearly stated, he says that, look, Joe Australia noted that this was a premium to be paid as a final bearer of the risk. The retournees and Alkut was only entitled to 10% fee, not entitled to premium given they had requested 100%. They were only supposed to collect 10% for what? Fronting fee, clearly stated in the report. So Alkut did not give a guarantee of 250 million. That is the basis of all this. So when people come and say that, oh, where is the fraud? Nobody is, the fraud is that there is no guarantee with government. What Danwell gave, Danwell doesn't have $350 million. We know that. Danwell's backbone, his backer, is supposed to be Alkut. Alkut is saying that what I gave you, even what my guy who conspired gave you, is only a cover note. The company whose balance sheet is $170 million cannot insure a 350 million transaction. What we should notice very strangely is that Joe Australia now managed to now come to Ghana and give 15% of the risk to a company called Best Assurance Company, which is quite strange. So it tells you that there was a gig going on and the government found out about the gig. That is why this whole thing is suspended.
Now, it's interesting because earlier there was this reaction that government disagreed with portions of this FTI report. But there's clearly some major similarities in a number of conclusions that they have made.
Yes, definitely.
So, in the end, what do we do? Because the whole thing, from what you have pointed out, clearly begs for a lot of questions. Should this particular deal be abrogated, or what does this particular aspect of the government report exonerating PDS mean?
Alfred, before I even come to that, let me add something where it would show the fraud element. Joe Australia and Danwell should have known that, according to the government's report, that the guarantees had the value of about 350 million. Alkut does not have the capacity to engage such a transaction. The company's net worth was about 170 million. If they'd been doing business with Alkut, they should have known this and not even approached Alkut for this 350 million guarantee at all. And that confirms what Kojo is saying, that it is a gig they've been running all along. Now, I would prefer that we abrogate the contract.
Abrogate the contract?
Yes, we should abrogate the contract, because there are pockets of fraud in the whole value chain. Perhaps, if we're not going to abrogate the contract, then the entire deal should be investigated, right from the word go to the end, including the 51% local content shares in there. Let's have an independent body go through the whole thing, and then after that, we now sit and see how we can put this thing right. Yes, it means that where ECG is concerned, government will probably have to leave them to stick to what they're doing now in handling the distribution of electricity to us till such time that we've come to the end of this and know exactly what direction we should take.
You see, Alfred,
finally, would you go on the same
law
tangent?
supports what my brother Mr. Jantwa is saying. Let me tell you what 3.2L of the agreement reads. Failure of the company to deliver and maintain the lease payment security in accordance with Section 511 constitutes a termination of the agreement.
So it is in there.
It is in there, clearly. In failure to maintain and deliver. So not only do you deliver, failure to maintain it. So let's even assume it was delivered. It has not been maintained because it's found out not to be what it's supposed to be. Now, let's quickly go into an area where we think that we should be careful for government. Government should not rush into this transaction to put it back, because there were problems before the Alkud thing came, and government was trying to quietly resolve that. Now they should halt, regroup, and let's look at it in the long term. If not, we kick the can down the road, 5 years down the line, this thing will fall apart again.
We're talking about 22.4 billion cedis of
It
assets.
certainly has a lot of questions on it that needs to be answered. And the analysis we've been doing basically has been on this FTI report and the government commission investigation report that was leaked sometime last week. Gentlemen, as always, I thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having
this
us.
morning. Kojo Poku is an energy expert joining me in studio. Lawyer Kwame Jantwa is also a private legal practitioner and an energy expert as well. And they have been at this PDS deal from the get-go. And that's why they have a lot of authority and passionate about this to speak about this particular issue. Thank you, gentlemen, and as well for your time this morning. And for you, the viewers as well, we're extremely grateful that you stayed with us. On behalf of the rest of the team here on Key Points, my name is Alfred Okanse. Do enjoy the rest of our programs. Good morning.